Hello and welcome to the first lecture of this new section on understanding business needs in this course, Master in Business Analysis. In this section, we'll give you an in-depth view of a very important part of the business analyst role, and that is of understanding the business needs. There is no one else who does that. So this is a very critical role for the business analyst. And in this particular lecture, we will begin talking about how would you go about identifying and understanding your client's business objectives, challenges, and requirements, and what are the key steps and techniques? We will take a look at that. So, what do you think? How would you go about identifying and understanding your client's business objectives, challenges, and requirements? Any thoughts? See, to do this, you need to follow, and you can follow a structured approach that has several steps and certain techniques that we will take you through. So let's take a look at quick overview of that, and then we will spend the rest of the lecture, rest of the section in taking you through details of these steps. So, what are the key steps and techniques? So first thing what you need to do is to analyze the stakeholders and their engagement levels, and how to do that we will talk about in this lecture itself partly. Then also you need to gather information from your stakeholders that you've identified and analyzed and you plan to engage. Then you need to do the review and analysis of the existing documents. Now, in doing all that, in all the three steps, you can use observation as a technique. You can also use modeling techniques, and then you need to document the requirements and validate them. Now, the continuous communication you need to be mindful of doing in this entire process of understanding the business needs of your customers. And there are many tools that we'll talk about and technologies that you can use, and you need to be training and continuously improving during this entire process. So how to do each of these, that's what we will do in the rest of the section, starting with stakeholder analysis and engagement in this lecture partly. So let's take a look at what and how our stakeholders analysis engage. What does it involve? So it basically, the stakeholders analysis and engagement involves three things. First, you need to identify who are the right relevant key stakeholders for you. Then you need to map. Now, what does that mean? We will explain you in the next lecture. And then you need to have an engagement plan so that you can gather requirements from them to validate and document later on, right? So three things that you need to do is a part of the stakeholders analysis and engagement. Identify, map, and engage the stakeholders. Now, what is identifying stakeholders? Now, identifying stakeholders means basically determine who are the key stakeholders. And this could be, like your business leaders, end users who will be using your products and services, and project sponsors and other relevant parties. It could be anyone who has an important role to play in this entire process, as well as who are impacted or affected by these people. So this is what we mean by identifying stakeholders. Now the question is how to identify these stakeholders. Now, let's take a look at the steps and things that you can do to effectively identify stakeholders. First, you need to review the project charter, business case, or any initial documentation to understand the goals, scope, and deliverables of the project. So, this whole business analysis will start as a project. So, you need to understand these three things: goals, scopes, and deliverables, and then determine what changes or impacts the project will bring to the organization, processes, and systems. So understand the project scope and objective is the first step. Then you need to meet the internal stakeholders. Now, these could be project team itself, members of the project team, including project managers, developers, designers, tester, or other team members that you needed to put together or your management needed to put together. Then you may have management, senior management, department heads, team leaders who will oversee or be affected by the project. Then there are employees, end users or staff members who will be directly using the new system or process. And there are functional departments such as IT, HR, finance, operation and marketing that might be impacted by this project. So that's how you identify the internal stakeholders by the different type of people. Then you identify the external stakeholders, and these could be customers like end users or clients who will be using your products and services, suppliers and vendor, external parties who are providing or will be providing you goods and services necessary for the project. So it's your project suppliers, not your company suppliers. Then government bodies and regulatory bodies that might influence the project through compliance and regulations, and business partners and affiliates who might be affected by the project or have a vested interest in its success, vested in a positive sense. Then you do this, use stakeholders identification technique. You can do by using variety of techniques like brainstorming that you conduct with your project team to list potential stakeholders. You can interview key individuals in the organization to gather insights onto who might be affected by the project. And then you will need to use the technique of visual mapping, mind map flowcharts of the potential stakeholders and their relationship to the project. And also you can use document analysis to review organization charts, previous project documents, contracts and agreements to identify potential stakeholders. So it's all to identify potential stakeholders that you can use these identification techniques. Then you need to analyze stakeholders' roles and influences, determine the roles and responsibility of each stakeholders that you've identified in relation to the project, not in general, but for the project. And map stakeholders on a metric based on the level of influence, power, and interest stake. And this is what we will talk about in the next lecture. Then document stakeholders information. Create a stakeholders register that includes detailed information about each stakeholder, such as their things like name, role, department, contact information, influence, interest, and any other specific information or concerns that you may have. Develop a communication plan outlining how and when you communicate. And that's a part of engagement. We will cover that later in more detail. And validate and update stakeholders regularly using that register throughout the project life cycle as the new stakeholders emerge or the existing ones change roles. So change is constant, right? Establish a mechanism for stakeholders to provide feedback and updates, ensuring their perspectives and concerns are addressed promptly. And again, this is what we will talk in more detail. So by following these steps, you can effectively identify and manage stakeholders, ensuring that their needs and expectations are considered throughout the project, leading to a higher likelihood of success. So that's the first step of identifying stakeholders. So what do we do next? We talked about stakeholders mapping, and you see a map diagrammatically shown here. So how to create that map, what is that mapping and how do you create that is the topic of the next lecture. So thank you so much for watching this first lecture on understanding business needs of your customers or clients in this course, Master in Business Analysis. I hope you're continuing to learn new things, continuing to enjoy, and I do look forward to see you again in the next lecture. Please feel free to message me if you have any questions. I'll be happy to answer a question. And also download the PDF file to take a look at anything that is of specific interest to you.